Hello and welcome. You are watching South Asia Diary with me, Mariam Wardak. Our top story today is from Afghanistan. The Spin-Boldak border between Pakistan and Afghanistan continues to be a flashpoint, with the Pakistan Army and the Taliban military repeatedly clashing and exchanging gunfire, resulting in civilian casualties. Both sides blame the other for the attacks. Also on the show,
Pakistan's economic crisis deepens as the country's foreign missions wait for months to receive their salaries. Overcoming decades of social and religious taboos, the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh are now embracing birth control. For some, a relic of the past, for others, an intrinsic part of their cultural heritage, the people of Kolkata battle to save the humble tram from fading into oblivion.
what explains the growing tensions between Pakistan and the Taliban? What is driving the border clashes, and what is the significance of the Spin-Boldak border crossing? Here's a detailed report.
It's a story of steadily deteriorating relations. Recent weeks have witnessed recurring clashes between the Pakistan military and the Taliban army at the strategically significant Spin-Boldak border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. A recent incident when a mortar landed near the Spin-Boldak gate left at least half a dozen people dead and scores of others wounded, including civilians, many of them women and children. In another incident, on the 11th of December, cross-border shelling and gunfire killed 8 Pakistani civilians and 1 Afghan soldier. Pakistan has squarely blamed the Taliban, terming the attacks intentional. The Taliban has refuted the allegations, saying these were accidents.
When we were at the crossing border into Pakistan, the firing started. After that, we ran towards the warehouses. First, a mortar shell landed, which was directed towards the village. It caused a fireball. A large group of people were standing outside the petrol pump with us. Again, a mortar shell landed and caused a huge fireball. After that, I lost consciousness and I do not know what happened.
The situation has been tense on both sides of the border since 3:30 p.m. Houses were being fired upon by mortar shells. As soon as the situation got out of control, the Deputy Commissioner contacted us, and consequently we alerted the staff at the hospital to be present there. Apart from them, other people also coming to help.
The Chaman Spin-Boldak border crossing is ironically referred to as the Friendship Gate. It connects Pakistan's southwestern province of Balochistan with the southern Afghan province of Kandahar. Chaman Spin-Boldak is the second busiest crossing between the two countries and a key trade route through which large quantities of critical goods move in and out of landlocked Afghanistan. The Taliban in Pakistan have often traded allegations of encroachments via this crossing. The Durand Line, the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, is a disputed one and has never gained legitimacy. Afghanistan and Pakistan have had territorial disputes at their border for decades. Since the Taliban returned to power last year, border tensions between the neighbours have risen sharply, with Pakistan alleging terror groups were planning attacks from Afghan soil. The Taliban deny harbouring terrorists but are also infuriated by a fence which Islamabad is putting up along the 2,700-kilometre border. But it's not just border clashes. Afghanistan has seen multiple terror attacks in recent months. The security situation has seen a steady decline since August 2021, when the Taliban captured power in the country following the withdrawal of US and NATO troops. Capital Kabul has been rocked by a series of blasts in just the last couple of weeks. One of those attacks targeted the Pakistan embassy. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif labelled it an assassination attempt on Pakistan's head of mission. Another attack took place near a hotel popular with Chinese nationals. The Taliban blames rogue groups within its ranks for these terror attacks. Then there is the Islamic State Khorasan province, which has claimed responsibility for some of these terror attacks. But one thing is clear. The Taliban, which Pakistan once vouched for and even nurtured, is now proving to be a growing menace to its own security. Referring to the recent firing along the border, Islamabad said the Taliban launched indiscriminate fire and unleashed a spree of unprovoked bombing. The Taliban say Pakistan provoked first by trying to stop them from building a new border checkpost and installing new fences. Amid the fog of claims and counterclaims, it is hard to tell who began the hostilities. So why is this border a disputed one? The Durand Line was drawn by the British but rejected by the Afghans because it divided Pashtun communities. The Taliban have consistently refused to endorse the Durand Line. They say there should be no borders among Muslims, especially not among the Pashtun community, which comprises the Taliban's ranks. In fact, since 1947, successive Afghan governments have rejected the Durand Line. Instead, they have championed the cause of one Pashtunistan, the home of Pashtuns. Something Pakistan has been bitterly opposed to. And to thwart those efforts, Islamabad built multiple seminaries and armed the Pashtuns. General Zia-ul-Haq, the chief of the Pakistan army who seized power in the 1978 coup, set up almost 1,200 madrasas in Pakistan over a period of 10 years. These madrasas were used to suppress Pashtun nationalism. Around this time, Afghan jihad began gathering steam. The Mujahideen, with the support of the United States, waged a so-called holy war against the Soviets. Pakistan backed the Mujahideen. The US intelligence agency, the CIA, provided funds and weapons to Pakistan's spy agency, the ISI, which in turn trained the Afghan Mujahideen. In the 1990s, when the Soviets left, the Mujahideen crossed the border to Pakistan and enrolled at the Darul Uloom Haqqaniya, an Islamic seminary situated on the outskirts of Peshawar. Many in the Taliban's top brass went to this seminary. Upon their return to Afghanistan, they formed the Taliban. Not only that, for decades Pakistan has run a well-oiled network of financial, political, diplomatic and military support to the Taliban. It now seems that very policy is proving to be costly for Pakistan. Are the Taliban Pakistan's Frankenstein monster?
Leaders in Pakistan are so focused on politics that they have forgotten to run the show. The country's economy is in doldrums and its impact has left no one untouched. On the one hand, you see senior politicians go on foreign trips. On the other, employees at Islamabad's mission overseas have not received their salaries in months. Pakistan's current debt stands at $23 billion. How did the country land in such a deep economic crisis? And what is the government doing about it?
To say that Pakistan's economy is in the doldrums would be an understatement. Its resources are bleeding, with no funds coming Islamabad's way. The term impending doom might do justice to Pakistan's economic condition at preset. The financial crisis has inflation numbers shooting through the roof. Prices of day-to-day products are now pinching millions of people. The financial crisis has now affected the government sector as well, and not just anyone. This time, several Pakistani embassy staff across the world reportedly did not receive their salary for 4 months. The reason? Finance Ministry running low on dollars. Pakistan's missions in the US, France, Germany, Oman, Vienna and Belgium did not get a paycheck for at least a quarter. Staff at the German embassy was even forced to write to the Foreign Office as the lack of funds hindered their everyday functions. Amid the crunch, the Pakistan Finance Ministry last week released the funds needed to meet the needs of the country's embassies and missions abroad. That included payment of salaries of their employees. The money dispersed covered for funds. They were short by a whopping $5 million for the last 4 months. Pakistan's current debt stands at a record 60 trillion in Pakistani currency, which is nearly $266 trillion. Their economy is going through a turbulent time. Inflation stands at a record 42% high. The country's foreign reserves have also depleted to under $7 billion. That amount is barely enough to sustain a month of imports. Given these factors, the Pakistani rupee has devalued so badly that it stands at over 220 rupees against the dollar. For short-term relief, Pakistan is now reportedly considering selling its old US embassy. The Shehbaz Sharif government is exploring the option of selling a building on R Street, NW in Washington, D.C. And reports say that the government will go ahead with it only if it benefited Pakistan. 4 years ago, our street building became non-functional. Its diplomatic status was revoked, making it liable to local taxes. The cabinet then reportedly agreed to the idea of selling the building in an auction because it was no longer appropriate for use due to incomplete renovations. Claims of the sale, as well of delayed salaries, have been denied by the Pakistani embassies. While they can deny the reports, but one thing Islamabad cannot refute is the economic mess they are in.
Rohingya families living in Bangladesh's refugee camps are embracing family planning. An idea that might have seemed unthinkable years ago is becoming increasingly popular in the persecuted minority community. Roughly 2/3 of Rohingya couples are now using some form of birth control. What is the reason behind the sudden change in practice? Our next report gets you the story.
Rohingya cleric Abdul Rashid still believes children are divine gifts. But life in a Bangladeshi refugee camp with 6 little mouths to feed has left him and his wife unwilling to accept another heavenly blessing. Earlier this year, his wife Nozmin asked doctors to fit her with a contraceptive implant, a decision that cultural norms among the persecuted and largely Muslim minority would have been unthinkable a few years ago.
Rohingya people did not want to discuss control. We struggled a lot in the initial days. We worked in the field to spread the message through community leaders. Eventually, they understood the importance of birth control. Now they come here by themselves and expanded our service.
Life for the Rohingya changed 5 years ago when scores of them had to flee a military crackdown in Myanmar. The hardships in the overcrowded refugee settlements in Bangladesh have prompted many of these families to limit the size of their households. Roughly 2/3 of Rohingya couples are now using some form of birth control, up from virtually none 5 years ago.
I came here to ensure that I don't get pregnant anytime soon. It will ensure that my infant will receive enough nutrition and my attention.
Family planning has a fraught history for the Rohingya Muslim. Earlier, many of them believed birth control was against the tenets of their faith. But that taboo has withered, with hundreds of religious leaders within the refugee community delivering sermons in mosques in support of contraceptive use. Many have volunteered for a dedicated public health campaign which Bangladeshi authorities say has brought a sweeping change in attitudes.
It's true that we can claim extraordinary success in our family planning program in the Rohingya camps. There was a time when they would get aggressive listening to this program, but now they are welcoming to the various methods. They understand that too many children can make their lives harder.
Since 2017, Bangladesh has struggled to support its enormous refugee population, for whom the prospects of a return to Myanmar or resettlement elsewhere are remote. But family planning has brought immense relief. In the first 6 months of 2022, there were around 190,000 visits to these family planning clinics from among the million Rohingya refugees living in the Bangladesh camps. This included many women seeking abortions.
According to our latest data of June 2022, we registered some 1,08,754 eligible couples so far. Over 70,600 couples have already chosen the program. Therefore, the success rate is 64.95%.
The story of Rohingya refugees embracing family planning, defying decades of social taboos, is an example of evolving societal norms in keeping with the changing times that can only be beneficial to all stakeholders.
The oldest tram network in Asia is in the Indian city of Kolkata, eco-friendly, economical, and evoking nostalgia for those who are sentimental about an era gone by. But now the humble tram is battling for its own very survival. Here's the report.
It's a slice of history that is crying out for attention and preservation. It was in the 1880s when trams first appeared on the streets of Kolkata. The initial horse-drawn trams were soon replaced by the steam locomotives. And then finally in 1902, the tram network underwent electrification and became fully operational. Launched in the 19th century, the Kolkata tramways are the oldest tram network in all of Asia. The then British administrators in India introduced the tram network in cities like Bombay, Madras and Kolkata. While it slowly faded into oblivion in other cities over the years, the frail tram network is struggling to breathe in Kolkata. A full-fledged tram network was once the lifeline of the city. But uncontrolled expansion, a population explosion, sharp rise in the number of vehicles, and introduction of more modern modes of transport have left the humble tram battling for its survival. However, in Kolkata, the erstwhile capital of British India, a perfect blend of tradition and a cosmopolitan culture, the trams remain a significant part of the cultural landscape even today.
If the tram services come to a halt, definitely it will be a loss of heritage, because it has been running since 1880 and it has completed 142 years. So if it comes to a halt, it will definitely come as a shock to everyone. And it is disheartening to see that the trams are slowly discontinuing its services.
2 years हो गया, 142 years. अभी भी चल रही है.
The Kolkata Tramways Company was originally founded and registered in London all the way back in 1880. It was managed by the British even after India's independence. Most of the tram lines were laid and extended around 1902. Kolkata's tram service ran smoothly till the 1960s. In the pre-independence era, around 300 trams used to run between Kolkata and Howrah. However, in 1993, the tram lines were removed from the iconic Howrah Bridge to pave the way for other modes of transport, like buses and cars. Much to the disappointment of many Kolkatans, these trams have now been reduced to being a relic of the past, as more and more routes are discontinued across the city. Back in the day, 300 to 400 trams used to operate in Kolkata. Now only a handful ply on the roads with just 2 routes remaining. Tollygunge to Ballygunge and Guria Hut to Esplanade. But the fact is that even in this day and age, trams are a preferred mode of transport for the elderly and school children. The elderly find it easier to board the tram, as the footrest is lower compared to buses. Trams don't overspeed and still ensure that people reach their destination on time. The tram routes cover several schools across the city, making it a preferred mode of travel even for school children. While the people of Kolkata want the tram network to be restored on most of the defunct routes, the state administration says it is an enormous challenge. They argue that the tracks which were laid decades ago are not in line with the modern traffic system, and therefore trams lead to congestion on the roads. Also, each time the antenna of the tram malfunctions or falls off, it requires an engineer to fix it. That takes about 4 to 5 hours, leaving the traffic crawling, sometimes even bringing it to a grinding halt. But despite the challenges, the West Bengal Transport Corporation says they are making efforts to restore tram routes.
A huge area belong to tram companies. If 60% of the areas, those are utilized from other services for earning revenue, then that can be used for making up the losses due to the running of trams.
Amid growing global concerns over climate change, environmentalists feel the tram network must be restored, as it is the only eco-friendly means of public transport, especially compared to diesel-powered buses. Trams run on electricity and not on any fossil fuels, and therefore cause zero pollution. The people of Kolkata are now urging the state government to run more trams, as it is also easy on the pocket. But with cyclone-battered electrical lines in need of urgent repairs, Kolkata traffic police cancelling routes, and tracks dug up to make way for other vehicles, will the slowly dying oldest tram network of Asia get a new lease of life?
Longest and the oldest surviving tram network of not just India but Asia, which is struggling to survive, somehow manages to survive, and this tradition and the heritage of Kolkata remains in the heart of Kolkata. In Kolkata, with camera person Felix Chokinath, this is Pooja Mehta for WION World is One.
That's all we have for you on this episode of South Asia Diary. We'll be back next week with a brand new lineup of stories. Until then, stay safe. I am Mariam Mordak, and you are watching WION. World is One.